In the first half, we saw what happens when bankers own your elected officials. But other corporate lobbyists are making headway in convincing governments across the world to spurn their voters' demands and introduce policies and trade deals that threaten sovereignty and basic human rights. No other industry encapsulates this more than big oil, and in particular, the fracking side of the energy play. Not only did then Secretary of State Hillary Clinton travel across Europe to press governments to take on the quote-unquote controversial natural gas and oil extraction method, she succeeded. Nowhere more so than in the UK. With us today is Tina Rothery, who has been at the forefront of the fight to stop it. Tina, welcome back.
Hi, nice to be back.
Stacey, welcome.
Welcome to Summer Solutions. I must tell you it's summer because despite it only being just past noon, London looks like this. Now, Tina Louise Rothery, you have fought hard and long against fracking being introduced to the United Kingdom, but Hillary Clinton, she's broken those glass ceilings, breaking it by being such a strong uber woman traveling around Europe and convincing all these men and women who run Europe to take fracking. She won here. Fracking is now allowed in North Yorkshire. Tell us about that decision. Tell us how it came about and against what sort of opposition.
Okay, so the UK has only been fracked once. Let's not forget that bit. 2011, April, caused 2 minor earthquakes, loaded little bits of seismic up in Blackpool. So it was halted, restarted again, the potential to frack in December 2012. However, the planning went through again in Blackpool. We stopped it last July, and our councillors said no, based on the huge amount of opposition and the clear and present danger that fracking presents. However, they found a soft spot over in Yorkshire, a council that relates to a site in a town called Kirkby Misperton. Now, the council there is primarily conservative. There's a pre-drilled site that was from old conventional drilling. So it was a lot easier to slip your planning through there. The vote was 7-4. Actually, one of the Conservatives actually did say no. It was 6 Conservative councillors and 1 right-leaning independent. And we knew it would go through. Now, there was 96% of all 99.2% of all correspondence relating to that planning was against it. And so despite that, they thought the 0.8% was enough, along with these 7 councillors to say yes. However, what we thought was really odd at the time is ordinarily when the shale gas industry in the last 5 years, we watch the stock market in relation to them. Usually when they do a surge like that, something joyous happens, there's a surge on the market. Now, there was next to nothing. Tiny blip, which was really strange because quite often when we do stuff, we read in the press that it says, UK public shale gas opposition deters investors. So we've known for a long time that our government is both ignorant, fraudulent, and corrupt. So we are probably better off trying to cut its supply line, which is the investors, by making them aware that we won't stop. So we are still 5 years frack-free. No truck has moved yet. There's currently loads of issues in Northern Ireland at Woodburn Forest at the moment. They're really mowing down protesters there, but they haven't actually got very far with the drilling. Scotland's still under a moratorium at the moment, now fighting to get a complete ban. We'll see where that one goes, but yeah. That's the current situation.
I mean, as you pointed out, the people spoke and the people were against it. Fracking first started in Texas, in Denton, Texas.
Yeah.
The people of Denton, Texas, after 5 or 6 or 7 years of fracking in their backyard, which has destroyed the value of their homes, destroyed their health, and destroyed their water, they voted in their own referendum to ban fracking. Higher authorities in the state came in and said, you're not allowed to ban fracking ever. So
astounding.
I think this seems to be the sort of thing you're talking about here. In the first half, we talked to Naomi Prinz about the revolving door between government and these corporations. So that certainly happens in Texas, where they banned the referendums available to welcome to summer, ban the possibility to ban fracking. Here, who are the corporate voices speaking? Who are the big corporations involved in this? Presumably Chevron and American
but also companies we think they've sent a couple of small sacrificial guys forward first. Yeah. Quadrilla's not a big company. It's financed by Riverstone Holdings, which is financed by Kerrigan in China and AJ Lucas in Australia, and was previously headed up by Lord Brown, who's now nipped over to Russia to lend his services there.
He used to be at BP.
Yes,
Yeah.
and he used to say that, the Russians were the threat, and then suddenly when Quadrilla wasn't doing so well, he thought he'd join Russia. And of course, he's Lord Brown. He worked with the Department of Energy and Climate Change for many years and appoints people to their roles there. Department of Energy and Climate Change is our regulator.
So Tina, let's talk a little bit about your personal odyssey in all of this, because
what an odyssey.
You've stood up. You're like the Rachel Corrie, against the frackers.
Yeah.
And of course, Rachel Corrie in the end
Yes.
met quite an
Yes.
unpleasant end, trying
to avoid that.
defend the rights of the Palestinians. But so you are taking on a cause against big fracking.
Yeah.
And now tell us what the current situation is.
Well, in 2014, in the summer, 26 primarily grandmothers took a field at 5 o'clock in the morning from under the noses of the security guards, and we held it for 3 weeks. We said we were leaving on a set date. We did a 50-person fingertip search, left it beautiful, told the farmer we'd gone. It was to draw attention to the fact that this field is earmarked for fracking, and loads of the elderly in the area had no idea that was going to happen. So we did that. We alerted the community. We felt it was the service they needed. And when we left, they then evicted us the day after we'd gone. And they ran up $55,000 in court costs doing that. They then said that it would be one of the nanas, someone from the nanas would have to take the hit, and that if someone didn't step forward, they would just find someone on video. And I was the poorest of our group, the nanas, so it was easier because they couldn't steal anything of mine. And so I stepped forward. So now I'm up in court on the 24th of June, and they'd like the money, or some reason why I can't afford to pay. I've explained that it's not that I can't afford to pay, which I can't. It's that I will not pay money to people to commit crime. So to me, morally, I actually can't fulfill this obligation. So what happens after that? I'm in a little bit of a quagmire. I'm not really entirely
Just
sure.
so you know, we are recording this before July, but this will air in July. Let's talk a bit about Quadrilla. Now, Quadrilla first became quite prominent when there was, they were covered in the news but not allowed to be mentioned. There was a corporation, we heard, who was dumping toxic waste off of Africa. That because of libel laws here, they were not allowed to mention it until a member of parliament stood up in parliament and said it was Quadrilla.
Yeah.
This was the corporation. So here the government knows they were already able to.
Wow.
It's like getting more apocalyptic now. As the summer solution.
Dun, 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 dun.
But so you're up against these guys who were allegedly or not allegedly dumping toxic waste off of Africa, and they were able to use the force of the law here to stop people from even knowing that. Now they've been given rights to frack your countryside. And of course, there's corporate confidentiality there. So it's proprietary what they dump into the water.
Yeah.
So how do you stop this going forward? What are you going to do? What is your plan of action?
Our plan of action is you've already told us this before, how cash-strapped this industry is and what a boondoggle it is. And so we're kind of hoping in the end that the oil price, the lack of funding, might help us out in the end. And also, what have you got to fight with? I'm a grandmother. I have nothing but truth and a deliberate need, an obligation to protect my young. So nothing they can do can stop me protecting my young, and I will not, under any circumstances, do anything to make it easier for them. I know so many who
as
the
Max
same.
said, they were losing money when oil was $100 and something dollars. I mean, it's natural gas they're fracking,
Yes,
though, right?
yes.
And
Yeah.
there's an oversupply of natural gas. The prices crashed. They're not making money in America where there are no regulations. They have an exemption from the Clean Water Act.
Yeah.
Here, they won't have an exemption from the Clean
However,
Water.
we have reduced our monitoring, which is
Okay.
interesting. We don't have a Clean Air and Water Act, so we thought, how are they going to get around that? We looked at it, and what it is they've underfunded air monitoring stations across the country. I think it was reduced by half. So if they do pollute, it's just going to be harder to spot it.
Well,
So-
now Scotland has banned fracking.
Yes, well, it's got a moratorium, and the ban was voted for, but it was a non-binding ban, and it has to come back up again in Parliament. So, yes, but they're strong against it. Actually, I'm up there next week, which is fantastic, because I was going up to rally, but now I'm going up to celebrate with them, which will be fantastic, because they are a strong force.
Another thing to look forward to, of course, is in Wyoming, there are famous photos you can see of abandoned oil fracking wells. They were abandoning those when oil was $100,
Yeah.
but they weren't making enough money to pay all the investors, so they just abandoned the wells. And the company, they create individual companies, offshore vehicles, to own the fracking well. They go bankrupt,
Yeah.
and presumably somebody in North Yorkshire, the taxpayers of the United Kingdom, will have to pay for the cleanup
I mean,
costs.
let's get to the bottom line. Why we just expressed why this is it's not economic to frack. It's a health hazard. Carcinogenics are everywhere. People don't want it.
No.
So why does it happen? Because the government guarantees the bank loans. Government guarantees the bank loans. These are banks that are technically insolvent, and they're looking for more fees to keep the charade going that they are solvent. And the government steps in to say, this is a horrible industry. It kills our people, and it's a disaster ecologically. But we'll guarantee the loan as a way. It's a bailout for the banks. It's
So
nothing
they
to
don't
do with
lose.
energy.
The banks can't lose on this.
They can't lose on it because it's like a bailout. In other words, the government could just bail out RBS and HSBC and Lloyd's and these other banks.
Barclays is one of the worst.
They could just write them a check, but instead they're going to say, we're going to guarantee a loan to this dead industry of fracking, wink, wink, oh, and here's your subsidy.
It's been a really strong call out for a boycott of Barclays. People are cutting the cards, changing
Hey, it
banks.
worked during the apartheid era.
Yeah.
Oh, but they're banning boycotts to anything to do with apartheid. But it's time to go.
Oh, we gotta go.
It's, the apocalypse is upon us.
Tina, cover the apocalypse.
Thank you very much. Thanks for having me again.
That's it for this Summer Solutions episode of the Keiser Report with me, Max Keiser, and Stacey Herbert. I'd like to thank our guest, Tina Rothery. If you'd like to get in touch, tweet us at Keiser Report. Until next time, bye, y'all.